week. I have Kansans fly here every day. Many times on this flight. This is a one-way flight from Wichita every day. It's usually 60, 70 Kansans on it. So we need to know if it's safe. Was this a preventable accident or not? So we want answers. But tonight, tomorrow's the day to mourn.
And your colleague said that he actually lobbied for this flight, started a year ago, nonstop flight from Wichita, Kansas, here to the D.C. area. Can you speak about the community in Wichita? You said, everyone knows everyone. It's like a family there.
Yeah, it is. I grew up 30 miles from Wichita, basically a suburb of Wichita, if you will. I bet I've had 80, 90 people from Wichita text me tonight, many Kansans. None of the family members yet. That I know of. So we do all know each other, and we've been through tornadoes before, we've been through floods before, and we'll get through this. But our community will draw together, we'll draw on our faith, and we'll get through this.
And lastly, during the press conference, you mentioned a scripture. I know during these situations, everyone says thoughts and prayers. So can you just share that here for our audience?
Well, let me see what it was. It was from the book of Psalms, and give me a moment to pull it up here. So it's from the book of Psalms. It says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." And as I look for a scripture tonight, you know what? I feel crushed in spirit. That's what we feel like tonight.
Absolutely. You also mentioned we all need to put our arms around each other and support each other and help each other during this difficult time. Senator Roger Marshall, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. There are a lot of scared people and families out there right now. Kenneth and Sharon, I'll send it back into you.
I mean, no doubt, right? Please thank the senator for talking to us, Sarah. Thank you so much. People back in Wichita are desperate.
Yeah.
They want answers. They're far away. They can't reach their loved ones. Although Jack Potter, the CEO of the Washington Airport Authority, did confirm that some families were here waiting for their loved ones. They have now designated an area for families to wait as they get news. Again, this search and rescue operation could take days. They said that they have counselors there for those families, as you can imagine, just the pain that they are going through. I've never seen a collision of this at this scale play out in an area that we call home, so close to home. And potentially, we are hoping for the best outcome from this, but potentially the amount of losses that could come out of this is truly devastating. So
break free with the new Opera GX, the browser that puts you in control.
D.C. coming together. The mayor was talking about the governors of both Maryland and Virginia reaching out, providing resources, everyone kind of coming to the aid of this major and massive rescue operation. I think hopefully gives us a little bit of calm as we are waiting just the most anxiety-provoking news that we can bring you.
Because of the nature of air travel, we were just focusing on the Wichita community that is definitely impacted by this deadly crash. But our community also, because we know there were people who were traveling home, as you mentioned, and family members here were waiting on them. And they heard this grim and horrible news, and obviously for the past few hours hoping that maybe someone could be found pulled from the water. But as we heard from that news conference a few minutes ago, they won't confirm if anyone's been pulled from that water, any survivors or the fatalities at this point.
Right. Again, our coverage continues. We have a host of reporters out there covering it from every angle for us. Fox's Chad Pergram joining us now. Chad, what are you seeing? Where are you at?
Well, we are just south of the airport here on Dangerfield Island. We are just to the south of the runway there. And I want to point out, we've seen police helicopters, we've seen rescue boats, officers walking out onto these piers with flashlights, because the way the current is, eventually they think that it kind of drifted down to the western shore of the Potomac River here, where they might find debris or, God forbid, bodies or wreckage. There was some conjecture here just a bit ago that they might be looking for even body parts. I know this is very gruesome, but this is an absolute tragedy that they've had here. I should point out, in the transportation bill, the FAA bill that they passed in Congress last year, there was a lot of debate about whether or not they should add additional flights to Reagan National Airport. And they put that in. There were some people who were very reluctant to do that because they said this is already a much busier airport than Dulles International Airport. It's not as small. It's a notoriously small runway. And other people said, well, this is good for the economy and so on. The Kansas senators who appeared at this press conference a little bit ago with Muriel Bowser, they noted that this flight from Wichita, that has just been added within the past year. And this has been a real test for two new cabinet secretaries just confirmed in the past couple of days by the Senate. Pete Hegseth, the new defense secretary, he put out a statement earlier calling this, quote, absolutely tragic and prayers for all impacted souls. And then also Sean Duffy, who is the new transportation secretary, he was just confirmed by the Senate yesterday afternoon. But what we've seen over the past couple of hours is they've gotten very close looking in this region on the western side of the Potomac River, looking for possible debris down here. And again, we're just south of that runway if you're approaching Reagan National Airport from the south. And again, that plane was landing from the south. If you've been on a plane flying into Reagan National, they come in, you fly by Mount Vernon, and then they come up. And we think that they found some of the wreckage of the fuselage in the pier that extends to the south of the runway because they have those lights that go out into the river to kind of elongate the runway there. So that's what they've been looking at right now, but we genuinely don't have a lot of answers. And the most striking and perhaps the most tragic thing is they've not told us about survivors. We've not heard ambulances taking people to the airport, and that's why this is such a bad, terrible, dark night here in Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia.
Yeah,
guys,
it's so
back to you.
dark behind you, Chad.
Yeah.
You can just kind of get a really good picture as to what they're up against. Do you see how many boats are out there? I mean, we see obviously it's a massive operation, but as far as boats, are you seeing a big number? Can you count them on your hand?
It's been different numbers. We saw 2 or 3 at one point here, and there was another one that came over here. They seem to be focused at that point. There was a fireboat that came by maybe about 45 minutes or an hour ago. They've been in dribs and drabs, and at different waves of the police helicopters have been coming through.
Right. Chad, thank you. We appreciate your time. We know you're a busy man this morning as well. Thank you. And Chad mentioned some of those national points there when it's national news, but local to us here, because, again, it's the nature of Washington, D.C., which is, he mentioned the federal authorization, the FAA Reauthorization Act, that added more flights there to DCA. And so now, while, yes, we're focused on this recovery and rescue effort, there's going to be something that happens here on Capitol Hill in Congress, most likely. There's a new administration in the White House. The president has already spoken on this, and we expect to hear from the president later. I almost said tomorrow, but later today, because it is now Thursday morning after this Wednesday night tragedy there at Reagan. But there most likely will be some type of action that could be taken. What that is, it remains to be seen at this point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, the focus is on the people on board this aircraft and the helicopter to see if hopefully lives can be saved. We have Bob Barnard, again, tracking conditions for us, kind of showing us the operation with the boats. And is all that still going on, Bob? I can imagine the crews are kind of shifting and replacing one another. This must be hard for those divers.
Oh, absolutely, Shireen and Kenneth. It's a work in progress, in fact, and we're not far from Chad, who you just spoke to, here at Dangerfield Island, just south of the airport. And I want to let Eugene Russell kind of pan off and let you can see the airport is over here behind us. And right now, the helicopter that was hovering overhead, we don't hear it, but we have heard a number of helicopters from across the river over at the Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, hovering close to the water. The ones that have been kind of overhead of us have been, high up, maybe a few hundred feet. But there have been other helicopters hovering right over the surface of the water, and you see all these flashing lights. These are first responders on the property of Reagan National Airport, the far southern end of the airport, off the runways here, and we have heard earlier that we believe any any recovery efforts, any rescue efforts will likely be brought to that location there on the airport property, which if you happen to, in the next coming hours, drive north or south on GW Parkway, you'll notice that police are blocking the entrances to Reagan National Airport. Apparently, flights in and out have been canceled till Friday morning. So no reason for anybody else to be going to the airport. In fact, you can't because they have the entrances blocked, even though we have crews there on the property. Now, if we pan off to the right, we're going to give it a try. Eugene, you see the helicopter in the air over there? We're going to see if you can see that. So there is one helicopter right now, and this is kind of what we've been seeing. You'll see it here in a moment, just kind of flying over the water. And do you see it, Eugene? You got it? Okay. So there are still helicopters in the air. You asked Chad how many boats. I would say there are at least a handful that we have seen, and you can see some flashing lights out on the water as well. So we know that there is still a helicopter in the air using their infrared technology, night vision with the divers on the water, because while there is that striking Getty image of the wreckage, in what appears to be shallow waters on the eastern side of the Potomac River over by the air base over there where Marine One is based. We believe they're using, night vision equipment as not as far as this shoreline, but coming from that eastern shore of the Potomac to where we are on the western shore, on the Virginia side, because we have seen the boats with their lights and their crews passing us slowly, and helicopters with spotlights flying overhead, skimming the surface of the water over here, almost to the shore of the Virginia side of the Potomac River. So the effort continues. It will get easier with daylight in several hours, but time is of the essence. If God willing, there is someone who is still alive from this crash, but as many as 67 souls lost, and some of them we believe probably still in the river, unfortunately. And do we see a boat there? Yeah, so you see a boat there. That one does not have any lights on it, guys, and we have heard that there was a call for anybody who had a boat and was up at this early hour on Thursday morning, who could get into the water and help. And so we believe that's probably one of them. As you see there is a motor at the end of that, but it is now, and perhaps that is an official boat, but we believe it is, okay, maybe one of like a pontoon kind of boat or something, but most of what we have seen out on the water has had flashing blue and red lights. That's why I was wondering if this one wasn't perhaps a civilian watercraft. But as we see, we pan off to the right. That's over there at Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, and we believe that's in the area of where the wreckage is, where the aircraft went down, even though where we believe they're bringing anything that they recover over to Reagan Airport is way to the north of where you're looking at now. But we believe this is what's that? Okay, yeah, another boat there in the water. So going the same direction. It's almost like they're doing a grid search in the water and looking at the surface. But this is probably, I would say, guys, the middle of the river, kind of halfway between our shoreline and the shoreline over there in D.C.
Bob, you hit on exactly what I was just about to ask about. How methodical does it seem? And you mentioned that grid search. If these boats are moving very slowly, just trying to spot anything, any survivors, any aircraft debris. From your viewpoint, it appears that's what they're doing. That's how they're searching, very methodically.
Yes, and the other thing is, Kenneth, thank goodness it is not windy. It's cold, but it's not windy, so the surface is very still. I mean, so if this was kind of a windy overnight period, the water would be choppy, and their work would be that much more difficult. So thank goodness there's like almost no, I mean, maybe a slight breeze, but it is so calm, at least the wind conditions, that you can see the river surface is very still. So that is making it easier to do the grueling job, the unfortunate job they are trying to do. But it's just, these are awful conditions, being at night, the water is cold, and you don't know how far any of the wreckage or people who are on these aircraft have made.
Parlez-vous Vestiaire Collective?
Can you say major savings? Voilà.
We are praying for all the families of these people that are on board the aircraft, the helicopter, hoping we find some survivors, although the picture is not looking so positive at this hour. But again, this is a rescue mission. And, you know, Kenneth, earlier we were speaking to some witnesses, because you can imagine the people, you know, that saw this in the air. I spoke to a man who had a panoramic view from his apartment, and he said he heard the crash. It felt and it shook his building. It felt like a war zone crash that he heard. And then he sees the plumes of smoke, doesn't know exactly what's happening. So imagine just the people who witnessed this you know, just now knowing what this is. Representative Congressman Eric Swalwell said that he landed at DCA around 8:40 tonight, just a few minutes before we know that this happened. Thankfully, he's okay. But so many people who fly regularly out of DCA, you talked about it earlier. I mean, what, 800, hundreds of flights that go in and out without incident. We've never seen something like this unfold.
We have not. And again, this is 2:03 a.m. if you're just joining us, which I'm pretty sure there are people who've been with us for hours now, hanging on to learn any new information possible after this crash happened around 8:30 last night, Wednesday night. You're watching our live continuing coverage here on Fox 5. We will be going throughout the morning here on Fox 5 because this is a rescue operation that is still very, very active, according to Mayor Muriel Bowser, who gave that update within the last hour or so. And there's a mutual aid agreement that has pretty much everyone working who is a first responder responding to that scene. You see this image that we just continue to show there of those first responders, those flashing lights. Those are fire trucks, ambulances that are waiting. And you've heard a few comments from the senator from Kansas who even said, it's so tragic. We have not seen one ambulance, at least from this viewpoint, leave the scene with a survivor, with a body, with anything. And that tells you where we are, where those passengers that were on that plane, the soldiers who were on that military aircraft, they are presumed dead. But we have not gotten the official word from authorities on the number of fatalities, the number of survivors. We pray and we hope that there will be survivors, but the reality is that water is murky, it is cold, there is ice in the water. Again, the first responders are dealing with about 8 feet of water, and it seems a shallow wreckage right there, which is, I struggle to call anything a good thing, but I'm trying to find some silver lining as these divers are trying to work and risking their lives to go into those waters, to dive in there into those aircraft, some dangerous situation there because they don't know what they're going to encounter, to try to find survivors, to try to find people who are inside that wreckage there. Again, first light should be around 6:47 a.m. with sunrise at 7:15 a.m. That will greatly help those first responders and those divers, those boats that are in the water that will be there for hours to come as we move, or as we, it's the overnight hours right now, but we know that they will be there. Even when this moves into a recovery mode, they will still be there trying to recover the remains of those, the victims of these, this devastating and horrible, horrific air crash.
Yeah, this is an enormous tragedy, not only for the D.C. region, but for the country, as people are just sitting, watching in awe and sadness as to what is unfolding in our nation's capital at one of the biggest and busiest runways in the U.S., Reagan National Airport. Hundreds of flights go in and out of there without incident. Travel across the country generally safe. This is the first time in decades that we are seeing a mid-air collision, and a collision of this magnitude. The impacts of this, sadly, have colossal effects on all aspects of life. How this kind of changes how we fly will be the next question. If there will be any changes in aviation, how this all went down, what kind of information was obviously flawed. That is all going to be part of the investigation that could take weeks, months, years to unravel. Of course, the black box from the from the plane will give us a lot of information. But again, Mayor Bowser not telling us if anyone's been taken to the hospital, as Kenneth was alluding to. But we are also not getting any indication that anyone has been pulled out alive. We have been on the air really since we got this information just around that 9:30 hour. So sadly, we are going on, in our 5th hour now, reporting on this, what is playing out in the Potomac River as search crews, a unified command, multiple agencies statewide from D.C., Virginia, Maryland, here. Willing to work in really dangerous conditions to try to find survivors. And who was on the plane? I think all of our hearts go out to the families. We are praying for them, who especially are waiting for some news.
As our team here at Fox 5 does its work to find out more information about this crash and the victims, we're starting to hear, but we have not confirmed, victims, and we wouldn't report that out until we confirmed it, until we spoke with family members. But we are starting to hear some of the anecdotes or situations that people were traveling from or traveling to, and it is as heartbreaking as you would imagine. We're going to hear those stories as we report them out in the coming hours, in the coming days, in the coming weeks, as this investigation really gets underway into how this all happened. But as you take a live look at that scene right now, we want to get to our Shamari Stone, back to him. He's been out there for hours now. Shamari, what do you know?
Hey, Kenneth and Sharon. It's approximately around 37 degrees out here. It's really cold, and a lot of people continue to come out here sometimes and have their thoughts, their prayers for these people who were on this plane. They're thinking about the lives, the moms, the dads, the families. That search and rescue mission is continuing right over there by Reagan National Airport in the Potomac. You can see the blue and red lights flashing. And if you move a little to the right, you have the police officers who are in this area by Reagan National Airport at Gravely Point, and they are just waiting along with these buses and as the emergency crews who are out there on that cold water that Bob Barner's been telling us all about as they continue to search. Well, it's very cold, it's frigid. You could have possible hypothermia for people, so they come here to these buses, and this is where they warm up. And this is sort of like a command post. This entire area is closed off, police allowing us to be here in order to show you part of this rescue mission. And those are WMATA employees there as well. So we are continuing to bring you updates here, and we've been out here for hours. Our battery on the camera is about to go out any second now, so I'm going to toss it right back to you.
All right, Shamari, thank you. We appreciate it. Recharge, get some warmth. And all of our crews have just been out there trying to get information and cover this from every angle because, as we've been saying, this does and has and will continue to impact our community. This plane coming from Wichita, Kansas. We believe there are a number of Kansas residents on there, but we also believe there were people from our area who were on that flight.
And the fire and EMS chief was talking about, of course, the conditions. We've been talking about what they're up against. We've been mentioning, sadly, daylight. Mike Thomas was saying, when could they potentially see a little bit of light? It was just after 6 o'clock, right?
Yep.
So we still have 4 hours to go.
6:47 with sunrise at 7:15 a.m. And I maybe I'm not up at that hour, even though I do watch our morning show when I can, but I think the sun is typically up by the time I do turn on the TV. And I was hoping they would get light a lot sooner than the time that Mike Thomas gave us, but that is the reality of the situation there. And again, they're trying to put as much light on that situation as possible, but it is sunrise that will truly help them. And silver lining there, Mike Thomas told us minutes ago that the weather should cooperate with them this morning with the winds. And even right now, Bob Barnard saying, I feel like the conditions really match the mood of what is happening, which is it's calm, it's solemn, it's a very sobering scene out there, eerie as well, as divers get into that water, in and out of the water to try to get into that aircraft to see if there are any survivors or to also recover people. I know that those officials are still calling this a search and rescue effort as well, but there's a lot of reality there in that water that they are facing, and a number of challenges that they're facing as well with a very rough scene.
Reagan National Airport, at least the latest information we have is that all operations are shut down till 11 a.m. tomorrow. Whether or not that will be extended, we will bring you updates as we get it. We saw one press conference so far. Hopefully we'll get another one in the next hour so that we can brief you on how this affects air travel. People fly out of Reagan all the time for medical appointments, for work, so we'll see how this affects things. We know some flights have been diverted to Dulles and BWI. From what we are told, at least at Dulles, there's no interruptions to their flights over there. But yeah, this could be a search and rescue operation for days to come before it goes into a recovery effort. But I think we're going to get much more information once that daylight comes. We have crews set up across the area kind of monitoring how this is going. But this is a unified command, agencies from all over excuse me, coming in to dive into these very dark, cold, murky waters in hopes of finding life, and the hope is really alive. I was seeing a prayer vigil that was put on Facebook for the people in Wichita, Kansas, that is taking place today, Thursday, in Wichita. But there is hope, and these families are hopeful that their loved ones can be found. Sadly, I know it's not very promising from what we're seeing in it being going into the fifth hour, but there is still hope out there.
And that image that you're seeing, that
astronauts are highly intelligent because astronauts buy the new Apple Watch from Klarna. Touchdown. So they can keep getting the move on, wherever they are. A small step for man.
Many times here tonight, or last night and this morning, in these overnight hours, the moment of impact between that American Airlines flight and that military chopper. And it does not get any easier to see. This video will be part of and this is EarthCam video. This is video that will be part of the NTSB investigation. Sharon, you were mentioning the investigation and how long it will take. Whenever we've seen any type of aircraft, near miss, collision, any incident involving an aircraft, and the NTSB and the FAA are involved, typically NTSB will do a preliminary report where in the next, maybe even the next 24 hours, we might get some information, and then it will be a year they will release that final official report.
Yeah, and this is the first still image that we got of the plane crash there. You can see just the wreckage in the water, a very chilling scene. One of the first images we are getting out of this enormous tragedy that we are witnessing on the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., and that one crew member on the boat, also a symbol of just the resilience of the people here in D.C., the willingness to dive in and face these dangerous conditions to hopefully find life. You also have to remember, this is a new administration. We just had an inauguration of the new president, the new 47th president a few days ago. Transportation Secretary is all trying to, catch up with everything.
Yeah,
so
Sean Duffy, I think 24 hours on the job.
24 hours on the job, and a lot of things to look at and analyze, and the investigation, of course, as you were mentioning, could take some time.
And even though this is a new administration, and of course President Trump has been president before, but there are officials who have served in government before, and also there are career people and career first responders at the federal level who are now responding to this, who, yes, while there's a new administration, the people who are these first responders, the leadership that we saw even at that news conference, they are not new. And this is something that these first responders coordinate, they plan for, something they never want to see, but there are typically exercises. And in fact, sometimes we even get an advisory here at Fox 5 of, hey, we're going to be doing water exercises, rescues, on the Potomac, on the Anacostia, and it's just a training, they will say. But this, at this hour, this is not training. This is the real deal, unfortunately.
And, you know, seeing Black Hawk helicopters is not odd in the D.C. region. We see them circulating all the time. A lot of the times, you know, they're doing these training flights, and if they are, they might go dark. But the failure in communication as to what went wrong is really the question here, as to how this, you know, passenger plane and this military helicopter could have even collided. The president put out a message on Truth Social a short time ago. It's unclear if he posted this based on information or if he was just reacting, but he said the airplane was on a perfect and routine line of approach to the airport. The helicopter was going straight at the airplane for an extended period of time. It's a clear night. The lights on the plane were blazing. Why didn't the helicopter go up or down or turn? Why didn't the control tower tell the helicopter what to do instead of asking if they saw the plane? The president says this is a bad situation that looks like it should have been prevented. So I'm not sure, you know, what information he is privy to outside of the air traffic control audio that is out there, but clearly there are a lot of questions to be answered here as to what went wrong, how this again could have occurred.
Yeah, putting politics aside, there are questions that we all have that we will be asking for hours and days to come. And I should mention and reiterate that Sean Duffy, the new transportation secretary, said that he spoke with President Trump and his team, also the new Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Hegseth and Trump were in the Situation Room when Sean Duffy said he called in and got an update from them, or they, you know, exchanged information. But apparently, again, but what I gathered from that was this, obviously, this is a high level enough situation at that hour where they were in the Situation Room. You know, I've covered the White House. I've covered the first Trump administration, covered the Obama administration as well. And I remember when, obviously, they go in the Situation Room, they are trying to not only get all the information, they get everybody coordinated, get them together, they can be on the screens. But they had to rule some things out as well to make sure this wasn't a terrorist attack, to make sure there are a number of things, a number of questions that we have here, but we need to know preliminarily what happened here. And it seems that terrorist attack was ruled out pretty quickly, at least from our understanding, and that this appears to be an accident. But again, this is all under investigation, an investigation that, when I say preliminary,
could take a long time.
That's an understatement, because there is such a large rescue operation happening on the Potomac right now. One.
It's off!
And then?
And then?
And then?
And then? And then?
And then some. It's all sorts of awesome.
It's and then some.
With the Air Florida Flight 90. And so, again, I remember we just reported on 43 years ago, I think it was January 13th, that we reported on the anniversary of that crash. And here we are now on this January 30th, the morning of January 30th, but on January 29th, we had a crash into the Potomac there. That, again, presumed dead, but the official word has not come from officials on the number of fatalities, or if there are any survivors.
It is a grim scene, a heartbreaking scene, as we are reporting. Now it is 2:20 in the morning here in the nation's capital. Josh Rosenthal has been on scene for us. Josh, what are you seeing? We obviously see this massive response still out there.
It is an absolutely massive response, Sharon and Kenneth. For much of the night, we've been standing down on the ground at the intersection of S and Half Streets Northwest, right by Nats Park, right by the Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge. It's been very hard to show you what's happening down in this area. However, now, take a look. We're getting a bird's eye view because somebody who lives in one of these nearby apartment buildings was nice enough to let us upstairs. And we're looking from his balcony right now. And what you see down here is this tremendous police response. For much of the night, we've been talking about all the different ambulances and fire trucks and police cruisers that we've seen coming and going, mostly coming. We have seen so many trucks, and it was hard to figure in our minds even how they could all be down here, because so many of them have come down into this area And now you can see why. Down towards where you're looking, there is access to the water. DC police have a helipad down here. We told you earlier that we saw a police helicopter land. Also, we're hearing some really sad stuff from the gentleman who lives here in this apartment. I want to introduce you to Jack Lyle. Jack was nice enough to bring us in. First of all, Jack, if you could, just explain to me, you were inside, sitting on your couch. Take it from there. What happens?
And I heard a bunch of police activity, and I looked out the window, and it looked like they were scrambling. They actually looked lost because they were on the bridge, stuck for a while. I guess they couldn't figure out exactly where they were supposed to set up. And then I saw them start setting up here, and I'm like, what is going on? So then I, of course, went to one of my news feeds and found out it was a plane crash. So I went out on the roof. There was another guy, we were talking about it. And I came back down and watched them set up the morgue staging area, if you will. And I guess one of the most tragic things was I saw them pull a body out, and it was a flag draped. So I assumed that was one of the military personnel.
It's the news that we did not want to hear tonight, but we all feared was coming. None of this is confirmed right now. However, we are hearing an eyewitness account. For much of the night down on the ground, we have been told that this was an area where people believed that they were pulling some of the victims. We were not able to confirm that previously because of our vantage point. However, now, seeing what we're seeing and also hearing this eyewitness account, we know that's exactly what's happening here. It's tragic. It's what we did not want to see, but unfortunately, that's the reality of this incredibly grave and tragic situation that we're in. One more time, you can see all this personnel down here. They've been coming repeatedly throughout the night, at times leaving as well, but mostly coming here. And if you take a look a little farther down towards the water, towards the Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge, you can see the extent of this rescue operation, guys, that is continuing and will likely continue for hours to come here tonight. Kenneth and Sharon.
So difficult to even hear what is happening.
Yeah.
It's even shocking for us to report out this. Josh, thank you. Hope you can get somewhere warm until we check back in with you. But yeah, 64 people on board that passenger plane, 3 U.S. Army soldiers on board that military helicopter, and the details are just so sobering. We want to get back to Mike Thomas tracking conditions out there, what the crews are up against and what they could be up against tomorrow morning.
Right. Well, thankfully, again, as they head through the overnight hours, we're going to continue to see what winds, and you heard Bob mention it earlier, that winds had gone kind of eerily calm down there, and indeed Reagan National right now reporting calm winds, as is a lot of kind of that Potomac Basin heading down to the Chesapeake Bay. Still gusty north and west, but not expected to be as breezy right through the morning and through much of the day tomorrow as it was this afternoon. That being said, crews are still battling a lot, of course, darkness and, of course, very cold water temperatures as well. So as we look at the planet, we can kind of give you an idea that rescue efforts here this evening could see those air temperatures drop down into the 30s. They get towards and beyond the sunrise hours, then they should start to rise into the 40s and perhaps 50s tomorrow afternoon. Not going to be quite as warm as today, but the trade-off, less winds, and I think they'll certainly take that there, as less winds would make the water a lot less choppy and make rescue efforts or recovery efforts a little easier at that time. I certainly think they'll probably try to do the best they can, because we do have rain in the forecast for much of the day on Friday, and they probably don't want to be out there with heavy rain falling across the Potomac River. Temperature right now, nothing on radar, of course, but 44 down in Washington. The one sort of good thing here is that temperatures have been holding well above freezing tonight, so that's helping them out, certainly. It's a good thing this wasn't a week ago when temperatures would have been in the single digits across much of the region at this time. So it's something very, very minor. That's a little piece of good news for the, at least, rescue workers down there, even though this is certainly not any type of of good news situation. As we zoom in, Reagan National, a lot of info on this map, but just kind of wanted to break it down for everyone. This is really where their search efforts are kind of focused, just off to the east and down to the south in the east of where Reagan National Airport. Of course, the tide and the flow of the river is we're going to want to push some of that debris down to the south. You did hear earlier Shamari and Bob kind of mentioned that they had seen those boats kind of expand their search area a little bit as the tide was moving things around a bit. Again, plane was coming in sort of off the Maryland side, trying to cross the Potomac. That's where the impact was. It was approaching runway 33, which runs in the northwesterly direction. Winds were coming out of the north and west at impact time. That's very typical. The pilots want to land against the wind. I did check just to make sure, because, you know, weather always a concern when these types of things happen, but winds were very sort of typical, 15 to 20 miles per hour, a little gusty 26 miles per hour gusts reported right around 9 o'clock in the evening, but that's nothing major for a commercial aircraft. Can certainly handle winds like that. Visibility then, the next question, and visibility was pristine, 10 miles in every direction with no ceiling at all, meaning that conditions were clear all the way across Reagan National Airport. The next kind of key time frames, you heard the mayor talk about it earlier this evening. They're waiting for daylight a little bit here. 6:47 is when it should get bright enough to see outside, see well. And as you get towards sunrise hours, where the sun officially rises above the horizon, of course, be very bright by then. That happens at 7:15 this morning. So we're still several hours away from getting good light onto this scene. We've shown you that video multiple times, and I'm sure you're going to see it a lot from the Earth Cam. That Earth camera north and west of this entire situation, not even focused on Reagan National Airport, actually kind of looks more towards Congress Heights, but the corner of it kind of caught that last turn towards Reagan National Airport where that collision took place. So that kind of gives you an overview of what we're looking at here. Again, that's the runway 33, that it's actually called runway approach 33 because they take it from that angle heading off to the north and to the west there. Did mention earlier the depths of the water. That, of course, is very important to the rescuers who are out there. There is a shipping channel on the eastern flank of the Potomac River here. That's where it's deepest, 30 to 36 feet. Now, most of the wreckage, from what we've understood, has actually been away. That shipping channel is extremely narrow. It's been away in much more shallow water, 5 to 15 feet. And of course, we had the gentleman earlier this evening during the press conference mention that most of the rescue efforts this evening have been in about 8 feet of water. But it's cold water, 35.8 degrees latest reading from it. And when temperatures are that cold, again, survivability levels very, very low. If you've been in the water half hour, 60 minutes, they do drop off rather quickly. That's just sort of the science for you from the U.S. Search and Rescue Task Force. That's the information that you can find on their site. We look at Futurecast. Again, tomorrow's a dry day and a calm day. I think they're going to be working very hard, though, because as they get towards Friday night and into Friday morning, heavier rains are expected to move into town. That, of course, can kick up sediment. It can cloud the water and, of course, increase some of the current. So I think you're going to see them try to get as much done as they can tomorrow at the crash scene down there, because Friday's rain is not going to be helpful to anybody, guys. We'll continue to update you on the situation weather-wise, but to summarize it, we don't believe that weather played any sort of factor in this crash from what we've seen.
And Mike, but when you were talking about that visibility, it reminded me of something that, you know, I've heard aviation experts say that, yes, while flying an airplane is the safest mode of transportation, that it's the landing and the takeoff that could be the most dangerous portion of air travel.
Right. I have friends that are pilots, and what they tell me is, you know, if something like this happens much higher up, at the very least, they have time to try to save the aircraft, right? You've got more room to work with. This happens so low to the ground, it's likely they had just no time, and that's why landing and takeoff are so dangerous, because you're so close to the ground. You don't have as much time to recover if something was to go wrong.
Yeah. All right, Mike Thomas, thank you for that update. Again, it's 2:31 a.m. It's just so heartbreaking to hear the details. But according to air traffic controllers, we didn't have the audio, but we had the statement of what happened. The airport advised the helicopter of the plane's approach and asked the helicopter pilots to confirm they had the plane in sight, which is standard procedure. What exactly happened after that is under investigation. But this is the first major commercial airline crash since 2009. I believe about 49 people were killed in that crash. And the senator in Wichita, Kansas was saying when one person dies, it is a rough day. When many, many people presumably are dead, close to 67, it is an incredible tragedy. You see on your screen there, of course, the massive response with those flashing lights. But that picture, if you want to zoom in, if you're just now joining us, this is the first image we are getting of the plane crashing into the Black Hawk U.S. Army military helicopter. That is the damage on that plane in the water as crews, multiple crews from the region are in the Potomac River right now dealing with a very difficult and dangerous rescue mission.
It's stunning for many reasons, especially when we think about the loss of life. But when you think about the fact this is American aviation that we're talking about, you just quoted that stat that 2009, that was the last time we've seen an incident where, a mass fatality incident here. And that's 16 years ago. And how many flights take off, land at our nation's airports, and at Reagan specifically, 800 flights in and out of that airport daily. Do the math on how many that is, per hour, every hour, every, minute or whatever like that. And it's just incredible. And yes, we've reported on near misses and things like that, near collisions, because those things are serious and they are scary. But we also know that this could happen. And yes, it hasn't happened in 16 years that we've seen a deadly incident like this in commercial air travel. But when it does happen, it shakes you to the core because we've all flown in and out of Reagan National Airport.
And there are a lot of questions as to what went wrong. The investigation could take a long time, but I think the American people also, as we mourn what we are witnessing tonight, also want to know for their own peace of mind and safety that, this can't happen again.
Right, because, I lived in Navy Yard when I first got to D.C. 10 years ago, and the number of helicopters, military aircraft I saw flying, up and down the Anacostia, over the Potomac, there were several every hour. I had an apartment that overlooked the water. And I remember seeing those helicopters always. Which
is probably fascinating to see. And being in D.C., it's a normal sight, right?
And some of them catch your eye because you think, is that Marine One? Marine One typically doesn't take that route that I would see, but there would be training exercises of those helicopters that look like the one that the president flies on. There are Black Hawk helicopters, obviously. There's the U.S. Coast Guard. This is the nation's capital, so we are used to seeing training exercises, military aircraft. We have air bases, we have military bases all across the DMV here, so this is not unusual. But we need the details, the specifics of what was happening with this training mission here as we turn our attention to Nana Sanktu Bonsu, who is still at Reagan National Airport. You were at that news conference, a little more than an hour ago. Please feel free to tell us what you're seeing now, Nana, and also go back over some of those details that we heard from those local federal officials, including Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Yes, Kenneth, we are back inside the terminal. This is Terminal 2. One thing I do want to put out there, because we've got a lot of questions from people about when does the airport reopen. As you can see, according to the boards, it is closed right now. But we were told in that press conference that this airport will reopen tomorrow, or excuse me, today, Thursday at 11 a.m. But the information is fluid. Just going to pan a little bit to the right over here. And this is the scene. It's the scene, depending on where you are in the region, that we've been looking at. Emergency crews with their sirens and their lights on, just as they try and piece together. But really what we know right now, and Mayor Bowser said that this is a rescue mission right now. We know that there are over 300 responders working on boats and dive teams trying to see if they can recover or find any people. Again, we've confirmed that we know that there were 60 passengers on board as well as 4 crew members. Now, let's just talk about these conditions really quickly. In the press conference, a number of reporters asked, what are the responders faced with right now? I believe the fire chief kind of described the situation as extremely rough, cold, and windy. And I'll tell you, the temperature continues to drop here, so you definitely feel it. Now imagine having to be the person who has to dive and go in these conditions. A lot of questions about the people, if anyone's been recovered, but right now leaders on the local and federal level say they cannot answer those questions. It's just too soon. They obviously said NTSB will take over that part of the investigation. Some people had questions about the air traffic controllers, but right now it seems like these leaders that we spoke with or had the chance to at least get information from, they are really focused right now on this rescue. Again, this is a rescue mission. We can't confirm how many bodies have been recovered. We keep hearing unconfirmed reports, and I can't confirm any of that because no one has told me. We also did learn that there were about 19 flights that were also getting ready to land. We're told those flights were diverted to Dulles Airport. So a lot of moving parts, whether you were here, you were on one of the flights that was getting ready to take off, a bystander, no matter where you were in the region, you kind of felt or saw what's kind of taking place right here. It's fluid. It's developing. I know we didn't get a lot of the answers we were looking for. I mean, everyone's just concerned about the people on board, and we just don't have those answers right now. We can only confirm how many were told by American Airlines, and then, of course, that to rescue mission. We have over 300 people responding as we speak. We also know that there is a unification center. There's a number that American Airlines shared. And we also know that the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, they're assisting with that. It's a location in the airport that we've kind of been pushed away from, as we understand, to protect those families, just the privacy and in this moment that they're going through. So again, we do know that there is a unification center here, and American Airlines is taking care of those families, but there is a number, I believe, that we've been sharing, and we'll put it up again for any families who may be concerned. I was thinking that we ran out here late 8 o'clock, early 9 o'clock, and you have to remember that some people were sleeping, like a lot of people are going to wake up to this devastating, tragic news. So I was speaking with our photojournalist, Sanan, on our way here, like, imagine how many, families are expecting their loved one, they're going to Uber home, we'll see them in the morning, and then they wake up to this kind of news. So I think right now, leaders just want to relay that information, that there is help. There's a center here. So as long as you call that number, they'll be here for you. But we'll remain to be here. We could just pan it this way. The airport is closed. If you do see people, they're either members of the media or people who are just waiting to be rebooked on their flight. Remember, the airport kind of almost shut down when this incident happened. So people who were able to leave did leave, but there was a point where Ubers weren't even able to come on to the property. I know the Metro was running for a little bit, and we're also told there's some people on the other side of security. So again, a lot of people, a lot of questions. It's all developing. We're trying to figure it out, but I mean, like we've been reporting, we're here for you. We're working around the clock, but we can only share what's been confirmed and what we can actually show you.
Yeah, Nana, it is a gut-wrenching thought to think that so many people will be waking up here in D.C. This morning to this tragic news of potentially a lot of loss of life. I want to ask you, Reagan National shut down operations around 9 o'clock. They said that they will probably resume by 11 a.m. Of course, that time can change. The Airport Authority CEO told us that some family members were here to pick up their loved ones. They have now been put in an area. They're getting counseling and getting information more privately. Is that happening anywhere near you? Are you hearing about that?
So, Sharon, I actually did ask two different individuals, someone with the Airports Authority and then someone with Mayor Bowser's office. What I can confirm is that, yes, that unification center has been created, and that was closer to where we were for the briefing. So that's in Terminal 1. We're actually told that the local leaders and the federal leaders that you saw during that presser, some of them were actually meeting with those families, so they weren't too far away. We're also told DHS is involved as well. So it's definitely taking place. We believe we saw some tents.
It's weighted in gold.
This is a light. Heard from someone with the Airports Authority that American Airlines is actually taking some of these families into their lounges that they have here at the airport. So two different things. It could be both, but we do know it's happening right now. Again, like Mr. Potter, with the Airport Authority said, there were families here, waiting to receive their loved ones who, were on a flight coming from Kansas. So,
yeah, and Nana, I hope that and pray that they're getting information first, even before we're getting it. Obviously, we have so many questions. Going back to your earlier point, before Sharon's question about the frustrations that people are feeling right now. I mean, I'm looking online here, and people, they're saying it's hours after this incident. Why do we not have more information? And I think, to be fair here to those officials, to those first responders, they are working. They are doing the best that it appears they're doing the best that they can under some very difficult circumstances and conditions there. But are you feeling I ask you, are you feeling the frustration there at the airport, even though we can hear some very upbeat music that's being played out of the sound system there at Reagan National, which is completely opposite of the situation that's happening right now, which is pretty grim and horrible?
This music, it's like on replay or whatever the case may be, but you do feel it. I mean, we've seen some, I believe they're Metropolitan Washington Airport Police, I'm not too sure of their title, but you see them, and even for us, they're trying to push us back. Like, can you guys please leave? Can you guys please go to Terminal 1? Like, we're trying to do some work here. When you do ask people questions here, officials, whether they're with the airport or local authorities, everyone's just like, listen, right now we have to focus on this rescue, as they should. That's the most important thing right here. But then again, you feel the frustration from passengers, people who thought they were trying to go home or arrive home, or they have a connection flight, and a lot of them are.
Keep that bird. I can tell from here that bird's about to watch.
What American Airlines is doing right now with their operations, but you do have a lot of people who just don't know. They said, I haven't been rebooked. I'm just waiting here. And you remember, the airport may open at 11 a.m. in the morning, right? So I think during the press conference, the CEO of the authority said it could change, but that's the time they're expecting the first flight to come in. And someone also mentioned that the FAA could change it, right? So we're told 11 o'clock now, but that time could definitely be pushed back.
Yeah, everything is so fluid. The families are number one. They have to get the information first. So I can see why they're being hesitant with maybe sharing it. But of course, the world is watching as this tragedy is unfolding. Nana, thank you so much.
And I'm glad Nana made that point. I want to say this for the people who are so frustrated. We've all been there when there's been something that's happened at an airport, whether it's weather or whatever, or a security incident, and your flight has been canceled, delayed, or feel like you're not getting information. DMV is blessed enough to have 3 airports that are very busy, and I don't ever tell anybody what to do, but I would urge you to go to BWI or to Dulles to try to rearrange your flights out of there, because yes, they say this airport will open later this morning.
But that's a moving target.
It's a moving target there, and I think with this being a ripple effect that we are sure to see, for those traveling in and out of Reagan National who are waking up this morning thinking I have a flight at 5 a.m. or whatever, and you're getting on the phone with your airline, you need to look at those alternate airports.
Yeah. If you're now just joining us, time is 2:45. We are covering, of course, this search and rescue operation on the Potomac River. Our Bob Barnard has been there for hours, kind of showing us a picture of the boats and the diving teams and the conditions they're under. Bob, anything new happen since we last spoke?
Yeah, another helicopter has gone up in the air here, Sharon and Kenneth. I will tell you, just kind of following up on what Nana was saying and what you were saying, Kenneth, too. At last check, the entrances to Reagan National Airport from GW Parkway are blocked, as well as if you come from Route 1 from, like, you know, the Crystal City area to get into the airport. That, at least at last check, those entrances were still blocked off. We are here at Dangerfield Island on the western shore of the Potomac River. We're going to turn off our light because they've asked us to do that because some of the crews out there on the water are using night vision equipment to search for anybody who you know, the possibility of anybody being alive probably is very slim, but as they do their recovery effort here on the Potomac River, there is now another helicopter up in the air. There are still boats there on the water, but they're off at a distance. There are not any of them near us at this point. I will tell you, in the last maybe half hour or so, a little bit of a breeze has picked up, so there is now kind of a ripple effect on the water here, and you see that was one of the helicopters that's been flying overhead. So there is a little bit more of a breeze, but you're looking here, that's what all those lights that you're seeing there on the box on the bottom right of the screen. That is the southern end of Reagan National Airport's property, you know, beyond the runways here. That's where the greatest concentration of first responders has been for hours. And I don't know if you can see it, but off in the distance is the U.S. Capitol. So, like, between us, the river, the airport, and then the Capitol. And we're going to pan to the right here because, you'll see over the water, the surface here is still relatively calm, but there are some now ripples here, which the first responders on the water were going to be having to deal with. But as we come over to the right here, I want to show you, in the last little bit here, a number of large lights, like big spotlights, and you'll see it here in just a moment at the bottom right of your screen here as we're panning over to this. These lights are new, and so perhaps that's where the wreckage is. Some of the work is being done. You know, it's hard to know exactly because it has been dark all night, but that over there is the area of Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, and those lights now are lighting up the water on that side of the river, the east side of the river, on the D.C. side of the river. So these very, very large lights have been added to the effort here in just the